Friday of the second week of Lent.
A reading from the book of Genesis. Israel loved Joseph best of all his sons, for he was the child of his old age, and he had made him a long tunic. When his brothers saw that their father loved him best of all his sons, they hated him so much that they would not even greet him. One day, when his brothers had gone to pasture their father's flocks at Shechem, Israel said to Joseph, "Your brothers, you know, are tending our flocks at Shechem. Get ready, I will send you to them." So Joseph went after his brothers and caught up with them in Dothan. They noticed him from a distance, and before he came up to them, they plotted to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes that master dreamer. Come on, let us kill him and throw him into one of the cisterns here. We could say that a wild beast devoured him. We shall then see what comes of his dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to save him from their hands, saying, "We must not take his life." Instead of shedding blood, he continued, "Just throw him into that cistern there in the desert, but do not kill him outright." His purpose was to rescue him from their hands and return him to his father. So when Joseph came up to them, they stripped him of the long tunic he had on. Then they took him and threw him into the cistern, which was empty and dry. They then sat down to their meal. Looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, their camels laden with gum, balm, and resin, to be taken down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What is to be gained by killing our brother and concealing his blood? Rather, let us sell him to these Ishmaelites instead of doing away with him ourselves. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh." His brothers agreed. They sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. The word of the Lord.
The response is, "Remember the marvels the Lord has done." When the Lord called down a famine on the land and ruined the crop that sustained them, he sent a man before them, Joseph, sold as a slave. Remember the marvels the Lord has done. They had weighed him down with fetters, and he was bound with chains, till his prediction came to pass, and the word of the Lord proved him true. Remember the marvels the Lord has done. The king sent and released him. The ruler of the people set him free. He made him lord of his house and ruler of all his possessions. Remember the marvels the Lord has done.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to the chief priests and the elders of the people, "Hear another parable. There was a landowner who planted a vineyard, put a hedge around it, dug a winepress in it, and built a tower. Then he leased it to tenants and went on a journey. When vintage time drew near, he sent his servants to the tenants to obtain his produce. But the tenants seized the servants, and one they beat, another they killed, and a third they stoned. Again he sent other servants, more numerous than the first ones, but they treated them in the same way. Finally, he sent his son to them, thinking, 'They will respect my son.' But when the tenants saw the son, they said to one another, 'This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and acquire his inheritance.' They seized him, threw him out of the vineyard, and killed him. What will the owner of the vineyard do to those tenants when he comes?" They answered him, "He will put those wretched men to a wretched death and lease his vineyard to other tenants, who will give him the produce at the proper times." Jesus said to them, "Did you never read in the Scriptures, 'The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. By the Lord has this been done, and it is wonderful in our eyes.' Therefore I say to you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people that will produce its fruit. When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard his parables, they knew that he was speaking about them. And although they were attempting to arrest him, they feared the crowds, for they regarded him as a prophet. The Gospel of the Lord.
The first reading comes from Genesis 37, 3-4, 12 to 13a, 17b to 28a. This is the story of the betrayal of Joseph by his brothers. And this story and the Gospel are preparations for the Passion of Jesus that already at this early stage of Lent were beginning to reflect upon the Passion. Joseph is sent to visit his brothers by Jacob, and when his brothers see him, they can't stand him. Joseph has had dreams that he would be superior to the brothers. Joseph is treated better by their father because he's the son of their father's old age, and therefore he's especially loved by the father, and he's given a special gift, a multicolored robe. They just cannot stand him. So they throw him into a dry cistern, and they're going to kill him. But Reuben convinces them that that would be wrong. So instead they sell him to a band of passing Ishmaelites. Ishmaelites, they're Arabs. They're going on their way to Egypt. They sell their own brother. Now the irony is that eventually their brother will save them during the great famine over the earth. And when he saves them, he tells them that it's not so much that they did this wrong, but this was all part of God's plan. He forgives his brothers. We hear of another betrayal in Matthew 21, 33 to 43 and 45 to 46. A man has a vineyard, and he rents it out to people who refuse to pay their rent at the due time. He sends servants, they beat them up, they kill them. He sends his only son, and they kill that son. And Jesus says, the stone rejected by the builders has become the cornerstone. Now, obviously, he's referring to himself, that he would be rejected by the Jewish leaders. But even when Jesus was crucified, there's a way to apply this passage to the crucifixion. Because Golgotha was a used-out rock quarry, and part of that quarry had been left in place because there were flaws in the rock, cracks. So those rocks could not have been used for the construction of the walls of Jerusalem. When Jesus was crucified, the upright portion of the cross was stuck into one of those cracks. Therefore, the stone rejected by the builders, Golgotha, has become the cornerstone of this act of salvation. At the end of the passage, we hear that the Pharisees and chief priests realize that Jesus is talking about them, and they therefore plan to kill him. But they can't immediately because the crowds think that he's a prophet. Notice it's the leaders who are clinging to power, clinging to authority, and who want to protect their position, who will kill Jesus. This is very important to remember because very often we're seduced by signs of power, by titles, by having authority over others. And we have to realize that all of these things are given to us so that we serve, so that we help these people, as opposed to building ourselves up and feeling important in front of others. And may God bless us.